The rain hammered against the cracked windows of the Denver apartment as Marcus Sullivan stared at his rejection letter from the Colorado State Police Academy. 27th rejection in 8 months. His hands trembled as he set the letter down next to a stack of unpaid bills and eviction notices. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. Still playing pretend soldier, Marcus? The voice cut through the storm like a blade. His older brother Derek stood in the doorway, designer suit immaculate, despite the weather, briefcase in one hand, and car keys to his new Tesla in the other. Mom called, said you got another rejection letter. Marcus didn't look up. At 28, he still felt like that scrawny kid Derek used to push around in their backyard in suburban Thornton. Derek had always been the golden child, valedictorian, full scholarship to Harvard Business School, corner office at a Fortune 500 company by 30. Marcus had taken a different path, one that led through 4 years of military service in Afghanistan and Iraq, then back to a world that seemed to have moved on without him. It's not pretend, Marcus muttered, folding the letter carefully. I served my country for 4 years. Purple Heart, Bronze Star. Participation trophies, Derek interrupted, stepping into the cramped apartment. His nose wrinkled at the sight of Marcus's sparse living conditions, second-hand furniture, a mattress on the floor, walls bare except for a single framed photo of Marcus's unit from Kandahar. You know what real success looks like? It looks like this. He gestured to his expensive watch, his tailored suit. It looks like having something to show for your life instead of living in this dump, chasing fantasies about being some kind of hero. Marcus had heard variations of this speech before. Derek had perfected it over the years, refining it like a prosecuting attorney, presenting a closing argument. The message was always the same. Marcus was a disappointment, a dreamer, a man-child who refused to grow up and face reality. I'm not chasing fantasies, Marcus said quietly. I'm trying to serve. Serve who? Yourself. Derek pulled out his phone, checking messages with the practiced efficiency of someone who commanded respect in boardrooms across the country. Face it, Mark, you're a 30-year-old failure living in a studio apartment, getting rejected by every law enforcement agency in the state. Maybe it's time to stop pretending you're special and get a real job. I could probably get you something entry-level at my company. Filing, maybe. Data entry. The words hung in the air like smoke from a battlefield. Marcus felt something inside him crack, not from Derek's cruelty, he'd grown immune to that years ago, but from the suffocating weight of everyone else's expectation. Their parents who loved him but couldn't hide their disappointment when neighbors asked what Marcus was doing with his life. Former Army buddies who'd found their footing in the civilian world while he drifted from one failed application to another. Even the barista at the coffee shop downtown, who'd stopped asking about his job interviews after months of the same defeated expression. You don't understand, Marcus began, but Derek was already heading for the door. I understand perfectly. I understand that successful people adapt. They don't cling to old dreams when reality shows them a different path. He paused at the threshold, rain still drumming against the windows. I've got dinner with the Hendersons tonight, regional VP and his wife. You remember what networking looks like, right? Or has it been too long since you've been around actual professionals? After Derek left, Marcus sat in the growing darkness of his apartment, listening to the storm. The Purple Heart citation sat framed on his makeshift desk, words he'd read 1,000 times. For meritorious service and exceptional courage under enemy fire during Operation Enduring Freedom. The Bronze Star lay beside it, awarded after he'd pulled 3 wounded soldiers to safety during an ambush outside Fallujah, taking shrapnel in his left shoulder that still ached when the weather changed. But none of it mattered here. In the civilian world, those medals were just pieces of metal, conversation starters at Veterans Day barbecues. They couldn't pay rent or buy groceries or convince a police chief that Marcus Sullivan deserved a chance to serve his community. He opened his laptop, the screen casting blue light across his face. 23 new job alerts, all requiring experience he didn't have or connections he'd never made. Security guard positions paying minimum wage. Mall cop openings with no benefit. Corporate security roles that wanted business degrees and clean-cut resumes without gaps for military service. Marcus closed the laptop and walked to his window, watching the Denver skyline blur through the rain-streaked glass. Somewhere out there, Derek was probably charming potential clients over expensive wine, talking about quarterly projections and market penetration strategies, success that made sense to everyone, measurable, respectable, normal. But Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he was meant for something different. Not better, not more important, just different. During his deployments, he discovered an unusual talent for understanding complex tactical situations, for seeing patterns others missed, for making split-second decisions under pressure that somehow always proved correct. His commanding officers had noticed, recommending him for advanced training programs and specialized assignments that most soldiers never saw. Colonel Patterson, his last CO, had pulled him aside before his discharge. "You've got something special, Sullivan, an intuitive understanding of strategy that can't be taught. Don't waste it pushing papers in some corporate job." But intuitive understanding didn't translate well to civilian job application. How do you explain to a hiring manager that you once identified enemy movement patterns from seemingly random intelligence reports, that you could read a battlefield like other people read books, that during your final deployment, Pentagon analysts had started requesting your tactical assessments on situations thousands of miles from your position? The phone rang, jarring Marcus from his thoughts. Unknown number with a Washington, D.C. area code. Probably another telemarketer or debt collector. He let it go to voicemail, then played the message out of curiosity. "Mr. Sullivan, this is Colonel Janet Reeves from the Pentagon. I need to speak with you immediately regarding a matter of national security. Please call me back at this number within the next hour." "This is urgent." Marcus stared at the phone, convinced he'd misheard. He played the message again, then a third time. The voice was crisp, professional, unmistakably military. He Googled the number. It traced back to the Department of Defense. His hands shook as he dialed. The phone rang twice before a woman answered. "Colonel Reeves, this is Marcus Sullivan. You left me a message." "Mr. Sullivan, thank you for calling back so quickly. I'm going to ask you some questions and I need you to answer them honestly. Your DD-2 and 14 shows you were discharged as a staff sergeant. Is that correct?" "Yes, ma'am. And you served with the 82nd Airborne, deployed to Afghanistan and Iraq between 2018 and 20. During your service, did you participate in any classified intelligence operations or tactical assessment programs?" Marcus hesitated. "I can't discuss classified operations, ma'am." Smart answer. "Mr. Sullivan, I'm looking at your service record right now. Your tactical assessments during Operation Desert Shield were referenced in 17 Pentagon briefings. Your intelligence analysis helped prevent 3 major terrorist attacks. Your commanding officers described your strategic thinking as unprecedented and essential to mission success." The apartment seemed to shrink around Marcus. He'd never known his reports had reached the Pentagon, never understood that his observations had been taken seriously at such high levels. "Sir, ma'am, I'm not sure what this is about. It's about your country needing you again, Mr. Sullivan. How quickly can you be in Washington?" The red-eye flight to Reagan National Airport felt like stepping through a portal into another dimension. 12 hours earlier, Marcus had been staring at rejection letters in his cramped Denver apartment. Now he sat in first class, a ticket that had appeared in his email within minutes of his conversation with Colonel Reeves, watching the lights of the Capitol grow larger through the airplane window. The passenger manifest listed him as M. Sullivan, DoD consultant. The flight attendant had treated him with unusual deference, and Marcus noticed the way other passengers' eyes lingered on him with curiosity. Whatever was happening, it was bigger than a simple consultation. At Dulles, a black sedan waited at the curb with government plates. The driver, a young Marine in dress blues, snapped to attention when Marcus approached. "Staff Sergeant Sullivan, I'm Corporal Hayes. Colonel Reeves is waiting for you at the Pentagon." The drive through Virginia felt surreal. Marcus had visited Washington once during a high school trip, but experiencing it as an adult, especially under these mysterious circumstances, transformed the familiar monuments into something almost mythical. The Lincoln Memorial seemed to watch him pass, while the Washington Monument stood like a sentinel against the pre-dawn sky. Security at the Pentagon operated with clockwork precision. Multiple checkpoints, biometric scanners, background verification that somehow already had Marcus's information loaded into the system. Badge photos were taken, temporary clearances issued, escorts assigned. Each step felt like descending deeper into a world he'd glimpsed during his military service, but never fully understood. Colonel Reeves met him in a conference room on the third floor. She was younger than her voice had suggested, maybe 45, with steel-gray hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to making decisions that affected thousands of lives. Her handshake was firm, her gaze direct. "Mr. Sullivan, thank you for coming on such short notice. I imagine you have questions." "A few dozen, ma'am," she smiled, the first hint of warmth he'd seen from her. "Fair enough. Let me start with context. Are you familiar with the term asymmetric warfare intelligence?" A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. Marcus nodded. Unconventional tactics used by smaller forces against larger ones. Guerrilla warfare, terrorism, cyber attacks. Exactly. Over the past 18 months, we've detected patterns in global terrorist communications that suggest coordination at a level we haven't seen before. Multiple cells across different continents, different ideologies, different funding sources, all somehow synchronized in their timing and methodology. She activated a wall-mounted screen displaying a world map, dotted with red markers. Attacks in Jakarta, Brussels, Cairo, and Mexico City. On the surface, they appear unrelated. Different groups claiming responsibility, different targets, different execution styles, but the intelligence patterns preceding each attack share remarkable similarities. Marcus studied the map, his mind automatically beginning to process the information. The timing intervals, they're not random. Exactly. Most of our analysts missed it initially because they were focused on individual events rather than the broader pattern. But your tactical assessments from Afghanistan showed a unique ability to identify enemy coordination across seemingly disconnected incidents. The room fell silent, except for the hum of air conditioning. Marcus felt a familiar sensation, the same mental clarity that had come over him during combat operations, when chaos suddenly resolved into comprehensible patterns. "How similar are the intelligence signatures?" he asked. Colonel Reeves exchanged glances with two other officers. Marcus hadn't noticed entering the room. A tall African-American man in Navy dress uniform introduced himself as Commander Washington, while a woman in Air Force blues gave her name as Major Chen. "Similar enough that our computers flagged them," Commander Washington said. "But computer analysis can only take us so far. We need human intelligence, someone who can see connections that algorithms miss." Major Chen activated another screen, showing intercepted communications, fragments of text messages, phone calls, encrypted emails. Each attack was preceded by communication spikes in local networks, but the content appears random: weather reports, sports scores, restaurant recommendations. Marcus stepped closer to the screens, studying the data streams. Something tickled at the edge of his consciousness. The same sensation he'd experienced during his final deployment, when he'd identified enemy supply routes by noticing patterns in seemingly innocent civilian traffic. "The metadata," he said suddenly. "It's not about what they're saying. It's about when they're saying it and how the timing correlates across different time zones." The three officers stared at him. Colonel Reeves leaned forward. "Explain. If you map the communication spikes against local time zones and look for mathematical relationships..." Marcus paused, his mind racing through calculations. "There's probably a base interval, something that would be consistent regardless of geographic location. Maybe lunar cycles, or stock market fluctuations, or even something as simple as a recurring decimal sequence." Commander Washington was already typing commands into a computer terminal. "Major Chen, pull up the chronological analysis software. Let's test his theory." For the next hour, Marcus worked with the three officers to analyze communication patterns across multiple time zones and date ranges. His suggestions proved remarkably accurate. There was indeed a mathematical relationship governing the timing of terrorist communications, based on a complex algorithm that used stock market closing prices as its foundation. "This is extraordinary," Major Chen said, staring at the correlation graphs. "We've had teams of analysts working on this for months, and you identified the key pattern in less than 60 minutes. But Marcus was already moving on to the next logical question. If they're using stock market data as their timing mechanism, then their coordination hub has to be in a major financial center. New York, London, Hong Kong, Tokyo. Somewhere with enough market activity to provide consistent data streams. And, Colonel Reeves added slowly, somewhere with enough legitimate financial traffic to hide their communications in the noise. The implications hit the room like a physical force. If Marcus was right, they weren't dealing with scattered terrorist cells operating independently. They were looking at a sophisticated network coordinated from one of the world's major financial capitals, using the global economy itself as their communication system. "There's more," Marcus continued, his confidence growing as the patterns became clearer in his mind. "If they're this organized, this mathematically precise, then they're not just coordinating attacks, they're building towards something bigger. The attacks you've identified are probably tests, proof of concept operations to verify their coordination system works across different operational environments." The room fell silent again. Commander Washington broke the quiet with a grim observation. "If he's right, everything we've seen so far has been preparation." Colonel Reeves stood and walked to the windows overlooking the Pentagon's central courtyard. Dawn was breaking over Washington, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. "Mr. Sullivan, I need to ask you something directly. Your brother Derek works for Blackstone Financial Group, correct?" Marcus felt his blood chill. "How do you know about Derek?" "Because Blackstone Financial handles transactions for 17 different international banks, including 3 that our intelligence community has flagged for suspicious activity patterns. And because your brother's department specifically manages algorithmic trading systems that could theoretically be used to generate the kind of data streams we've been discussing." The room seemed to tilt around Marcus. "You think Derek is involved in this?" "I think," Colonel Reeves said carefully, "that we need to consider all possibilities, including the possibility that the coordination hub we're looking for isn't in New York or London or Hong Kong. It might be right here in the United States, operated by someone with legitimate access to financial data streams and the technical knowledge to weaponize them." Marcus sank into his chair, his mind reeling. 24 hours ago, Derek had been calling him a failure and a dreamer. Now the Pentagon was suggesting his own brother might be connected to an international terrorist network. "What do you need me to do?" he asked quietly. Colonel Reeves returned to the table, her expression grim but determined. "We need you to go home, Mr. Sullivan, back to Denver, back to your normal life, and we need you to watch your brother very, very carefully." The Denver skyline looked different through the lens of suspicion. Marcus sat in his rental car across from Blackstone Financial Group's gleaming headquarters, a 40-story tower of glass and steel that dominated the city's business district. For 3 days he'd been watching, learning patterns, documenting routines that might reveal the truth about his brother's activities. Colonel Reeves had been explicit in her instructions. Trust no one completely, suspect everyone partially, and remember that the most dangerous enemies are often the ones who know us best. Derek's schedule followed predictable rhythms. Arrival at 7:30 a.m. sharp, lunch meetings that lasted exactly 90 minutes, departure between 8:00 and 8:30 p.m. depending on market conditions. But it was the anomalies that captured Marcus's attention. The Thursday evening meetings that ran until midnight, the weekend visits that didn't appear on any official company calendar, the private elevator access that bypassed normal security protocols. Marcus had developed a cover story for his surveillance. Job interviews in the financial district. It provided legitimate reasons to be in the area while allowing him to observe Derek's movements without arousing suspicion. But the deeper he dove into his brother's world, the more questions emerged. On Wednesday afternoon, his encrypted phone buzzed with an urgent message from Major Chen. Financial Intelligence Division detected unusual trading patterns originating from target location. Recommend immediate escalation of surveillance protocols. The message included technical specifications that made Marcus's blood run cold. Someone at Blackstone Financial was executing trades worth millions of dollars based on mathematical algorithms that perfectly matched the terrorist communication patterns the Pentagon had identified. The timing, the geographical distribution, the systematic approach, everything pointed to a coordination system far more sophisticated than anything they'd initially suspected. That evening, Marcus positioned himself at a coffee shop with clear sightlines to Blackstone's executive parking garage. Derek emerged at 8:47 p.m., but instead of heading toward his usual route home, he drove deeper into downtown Denver's warehouse district. Following at a safe distance, Marcus watched Derek park outside a converted industrial building that housed several technology startups, but Derek didn't enter any of the legitimate businesses. Instead, he used a keycard to access a service entrance that led to the building's basement levels. Marcus parked 3 blocks away and approached on foot, using urban reconnaissance techniques learned during his military service. The basement windows were covered with blackout curtains, but he could see light leaking around the edges and hear the low hum of electronic equipment. Through a partially open ventilation grate, Marcus caught fragments of conversation in multiple languages: English, Arabic, what sounded like Russian or Eastern European dialects. The voices carried the urgent, focused tone of people working under pressure toward a specific deadline. Phase 3 implementation needs acceleration. Derek's voice cuts through the mix of languages. The Jakarta results exceeded projections by 30%. If we can replicate those parameters across 7 target markets simultaneously, Marcus pressed closer to the grate, straining to hear more details, but what he heard next made his heart stop. The Pentagon consultation was unexpected but manageable, Derek continued. My brother's tactical background actually provides useful intelligence about military response protocols. If he accepts the position we're offering, we'll have real-time access to federal counterterrorism strategies. Another voice, heavily accented, responded, Your brother's military record indicates significant analytical capabilities. Are you certain he can be controlled? Derek's laugh carried notes of cruelty that Marcus had heard throughout their childhood, but never understood in this context. Marcus has spent his entire adult life desperate for my approval. He's been rejected by every legitimate law enforcement agency in the country. Offer him purpose, respect, a chance to feel important, and he'll do whatever we need. He's the perfect asset, trained by the U.S. military, clearance for sensitive operations, and completely loyal to family. The conversation continued, but Marcus had heard enough to understand the scope of the betrayal. Derek hadn't just discovered his Pentagon consultation, he'd planned it. The mysterious call from Colonel Reeves, the urgent flight to Washington, the revelation about international terrorist networks, all of it had been orchestrated to position Marcus as an unwitting double agent. But as Marcus prepared to retreat, he heard something that changed everything. The final phase requires someone with active military connections, Derek said. Someone who can access current intelligence databases and operational protocols. Marcus's consultation establishes the perfect cover for that access. And if he discovers our true objectives, Derek's voice carried absolute certainty. He won't. Marcus sees what he wants to see. A chance to be the hero he's always imagined himself to be. By the time he understands what's really happening, Seattle, Portland, and San Francisco will already be in chaos. Marcus felt the world tilt around him. They weren't just planning coordinated terrorist attacks, they were targeting the West Coast, using Marcus's Pentagon access to gather intelligence about federal response capabilities. He retreated to his car and activated the encrypted communications system, fingers trembling as he typed an emergency report to Colonel Reeves. But before he could send it, his regular phone rang, Derek's number. Marcus, where are you? At home. Why? Good. I've got exciting news about that job opportunity we discussed. Can you meet me at the office tomorrow morning? There are some people I want you to meet, and we need to move quickly on the paperwork. Marcus forced enthusiasm into his voice while his mind raced through implications. That sounds great. What time? 8 a.m. sharp. Dress professionally. This is the real deal, brother. Your chance to finally make something of yourself. After ending the call, Marcus sat in his car staring at Derek's number in his phone contacts. For 30 years, that number had represented his lifeline to family, to belonging, to the possibility of acceptance. Now it represented something else entirely, a direct connection to enemies who were planning mass casualties on American soil. The encrypted phone buzzed with an incoming call from Colonel Reeves. Sullivan, we've detected increased terrorist communications activity across multiple channels. Something big is accelerating. What's your status? Marcus looked back at the warehouse where lights still glowed in the basement windows, where his brother was coordinating attacks that could kill thousands of innocent people. Colonel, I think I know when they're planning to strike. And I think I know how to stop them. How? Marcus took a deep breath, understanding that his answer would cross a line he could never uncross. By becoming exactly what Derek thinks I already am. By earning his complete trust and learning everything about their operation. That's extremely dangerous, Sullivan. If they discover you're working with us, they won't, Marcus said, surprised by the certainty in his own voice. Derek thinks he knows me, but he's never seen what I'm really capable of. He's about to find out that some failures are more dangerous than any success. The line went quiet, except for the sound of Colonel Reeves's steady breathing. When she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of command decisions that could reshape the fate of nations. Mr. Sullivan, you are now officially activated for deep cover operations. God help us all. Marcus arrived at Blackstone Financial Group at exactly 7:58 a.m., wearing his only decent suit and carrying a briefcase containing documents that would establish his cover identity as Derek's desperate, grateful younger brother. But hidden within the briefcase's false bottom lay sophisticated recording equipment provided by Pentagon intelligence, devices so advanced they could capture conversations through reinforced concrete. The lobby buzzed with morning energy. Executives clutching coffee cups, analysts scrolling through market data on tablets, security guards maintaining professional vigilance. Marcus presented himself at the reception desk with carefully practiced nervousness. I'm here to see Derek Sullivan. He's expecting me. The receptionist's smile carried warmth reserved for family members of senior executives. Of course, Mr. Sullivan. He mentioned you'd be joining us. 38th floor, corner office. The elevator ride felt like ascending into enemy territory. Each floor brought him deeper into Derek's domain, further from the world where moral lines remained clearly drawn. But Marcus had spent 4 years in Afghanistan, learning to navigate hostile environments, and those skills translated perfectly to corporate espionage. Derek's office occupied prime real estate with panoramic views of the Rocky Mountains. Awards and certificates covered one wall. MBA from Wharton, recognition from international finance organizations, photos with politicians and business leaders, but Marcus's trained eye noticed details others would miss. Multiple computer monitors displaying real-time global market data, secure communication equipment that belonged in military installations rather than corporate offices, and a wall safe whose electronic lock showed recent frequent access. Marcus, you clean up well. Derek stood behind his desk, gesturing toward leather chairs arranged around a conference table. I've got the team assembled for your orientation. 3 people waited in the seating area. Marcus recognized Eric Lindgren and Rashid Al-Manzouri from his previous surveillance, but the third person was new, a woman in her 40s with platinum blonde hair and ice blue eyes that seemed to catalog every detail of his appearance. This is Victoria Kozlov, our Director of International Operations, Derek said. She'll be handling your integration process. Victoria's handshake lasted a fraction longer than necessary, her grip testing his reaction to discomfort. Mr. Sullivan, your brother speaks very highly of your analytical capabilities. We're always interested in people who can see patterns others miss. For the next 2 hours, Marcus endured what appeared to be standard corporate orientation, but felt more like sophisticated psychological evaluation. Forms requesting detailed personal history, aptitude tests that probed his technical knowledge, scenario-based questions that seemed designed to measure his moral flexibility. But the real test came when Victoria led him to a secure conference room in the building's sub-basement, accessible only through keycard-protected elevators and biometric scanners. "This is where we conduct our most sensitive operations," she explained, gesturing toward walls lined with monitors displaying financial data from markets across 6 continents. Currency fluctuations, commodity prices, political stability indices. We process information that most firms never see. The room hummed with activity. Technicians monitored communication arrays while analysts tracked patterns in what looked like legitimate financial data. But Marcus's military experience allowed him to recognize the setup for what it really was: a command center designed for coordinating complex operations across multiple time zones. "Your first assignment," Derek said, handing Marcus a tablet loaded with financial analysis software, "is to review communication patterns in emerging market currencies. Look for anomalies, timing inconsistencies, anything that suggests coordinated manipulation." Marcus accepted the tablet, knowing that every keystroke would be monitored, every query logged and analyzed. But the Pentagon had prepared him for this scenario. Hidden within his seemingly legitimate financial analysis, he would be gathering intelligence about the network's operational structure. The data streams flowing across his screen told a story that chilled him to his core. Someone was using legitimate financial instruments to coordinate activities that had nothing to do with profit margins or market efficiency. Currency trades in Jakarta preceded communication spikes in Brussels by exactly 47 minutes. Stock purchases in Cairo generated automated responses in Mexico City following mathematical sequences that matched terrorist attack timelines. "Interesting patterns," Marcus said aloud, playing his role perfectly while memorizing details for his next Pentagon report. Victoria appeared at his shoulder. "What kind of patterns?" "Correlation coefficients that suggest systematic rather than random trading behavior. Someone's using mathematical formulas to time their market entries across different geographical regions." "And what would that suggest to you?" Marcus pretended to consider the question carefully. "Either incredibly sophisticated algorithm trading, or—" He let the sentence hang, inviting her to complete his thought. Or someone's using financial markets as a communication system, hiding messages and transaction data where regulatory agencies would never think to look." Victoria exchanged glances with Derek, who nodded almost imperceptibly. "Very good, Marcus. You're beginning to understand the scope of what we do here." Over the following hours, Marcus was gradually introduced to the network's true operations. Under the guise of international finance, Derek's team was coordinating activities for terrorist cells across 4 continents. Market transactions generated coded instructions for operatives in target cities. Currency fluctuations triggered pre-positioned assets to begin preparation phases. Stock price movements activated sleeper agents who had been waiting months or years for their operational orders. But the most horrifying revelation came during a late afternoon briefing when Derek activated a secure video conference with operatives in Seattle, Portland, and San Francisco. "Phase 4 implementation begins Monday," Derek announced to the assembled faces on screen. "Transportation infrastructure targets have been surveyed and confirmed accessible. Emergency response protocols have been analyzed using intelligence provided by our Pentagon asset." Marcus felt his blood freeze as he realized Derek was referring to him. The consultation with Colonel Reeves, the tactical assessments he'd provided, the strategic discussions about counterterrorism capabilities, all of it had been fed back to terrorist operatives planning attacks on American cities. "Casualty projections?" asked one of the operatives, a young woman whose casual tone while discussing mass murder made Marcus's stomach clench. "Conservative estimates suggest 15,000 immediate casualties across all 3 targets." Al-Manzouri replied, consulting data on his tablet. "Infrastructure damage should create secondary effects lasting several months, potentially affecting the entire West Coast economic corridor." The conference continued for another 30 minutes, detailing logistics that would result in the largest coordinated terrorist attack in American history. Marcus maintained his cover, asking questions that demonstrated enthusiasm for the operation, while internally cataloging every detail for immediate transmission to Colonel Reeves. When the meeting finally ended, Derek clapped Marcus on the shoulder with genuine affection. "You exceeded every expectation today, brother. I knew you had potential, but this level of analytical thinking, it's exactly what our organization needs." Marcus forced a smile while calculating how many hours remained before Monday's planned attacks. "I'm just happy to finally be part of something important." "Oh, you have no idea how important," Victoria said, her smile carrying predatory satisfaction. "Tomorrow we'll show you the operational command center. You'll have real-time access to communications with assets in 12 countries. Your military background makes you perfect for coordinating tactical responses when law enforcement inevitably tries to interfere." As Marcus left Blackstone Financial that evening, he understood that he'd crossed into territory where a single mistake would mean not just his death, but the deaths of thousands of innocent Americans. His encrypted phone buzzed with an incoming message, but he waited until reaching his apartment before reading Colonel Reeves's urgent communication. "Intelligence suggests imminent large-scale attack. Need immediate operational details. Time is running out." Marcus began typing his response, knowing that his next words would either save lives or seal his fate as a traitor to everything he'd sworn to protect. The emergency extraction protocol activated at 2:17 a.m. Sunday morning. Marcus woke to his encrypted phone vibrating against his nightstand in a pattern that meant immediate danger. 3 short pulses, pause, 3 long pulses, pause, 3 short pulses. Cello S in Morse code, transmitted through electronic signals that would appear as routine network traffic to anyone monitoring his communications. He dressed quickly in dark clothing and grabbed the go-bag he'd prepared according to Pentagon instructions. Inside, false identification documents, emergency cash, a clean cell phone and a .45 caliber pistol with 2 extra magazines. The weight of the weapon felt familiar in his hands, bringing back muscle memory from countless training exercises and combat deployments. The message on his encrypted device was brief but terrifying. "Cover blown. Kozlov knows. Abort immediately. Extraction team en route." Marcus's mind raced through possibilities. How had Victoria discovered his true identity? He'd been meticulous about maintaining his cover, careful to express enthusiasm for the terrorist operation while gathering intelligence for the Pentagon. But somewhere in the past 48 hours, he'd made a mistake that would now cost him everything. A soft knock at his apartment door made him freeze. 3 taps, pause, 2 taps, the extraction team's identification signal. Marcus approached cautiously, weapon drawn, and peered through the security peephole. 2 figures in tactical gear stood in the hallway, faces obscured by night vision goggles and communication headsets. One held up an identification badge that read FBI Counterterrorism Division. The other gestured urgently toward the elevator bank. Marcus opened the door and found himself face to face with Agent Sarah Chen, no relation to Major Chen from the Pentagon, but equally focused and professional. "Mr. Sullivan, we have approximately 4 minutes before hostile forces reach this location. Your brother's people discovered your Pentagon connections 3 hours ago. They're coming to eliminate you as a security threat." As if to emphasize her point, the sound of multiple vehicles echoing through the apartment complex parking garage, Marcus grabbed his go-bag and followed Agent Chen toward the emergency stairwell, her partner providing rear security with military precision. "How did they find out?" Marcus asked as they descended rapidly toward the building's service levels. "Financial intelligence intercept," Agent Chen replied without breaking stride. "Your brother's team detected anomalous data access patterns in their system. Someone with your clearance level was pulling information that didn't match your supposed position in their organization." They reached the basement level just as Marcus heard the distinctive sound of his apartment door being breached, the splintering crash of a battering ram, followed by shouting voices and heavy footsteps. Derek's people had arrived with overwhelming force, but they were already too late. Agent Chen led them through a maintenance tunnel, that connected to the adjacent building's underground parking structure. A black SUV waited with the engine running, the driver ready for immediate departure. But as they approached the vehicle, Marcus heard something that made his blood run cold. Building secured. Target not located. Initiate neighborhood sweep. The voice belonged to Eric Lindgren, transmitted through radio communications that Agent Chen's equipment had intercepted. Derek's team wasn't just searching Marcus's apartment, they were expanding their hunt throughout the surrounding area. They're conducting a systematic search, Marcus said, as they reached the SUV. Military-style sweep pattern. They'll find us if we try to leave through normal routes. Agent Chen's partner, who introduced himself as Agent Rodriguez, consulted a tablet displaying real-time tactical information. Hostiles have positioned vehicles at primary exit points. They're using professional counter-surveillance techniques. Because they are professionals, Marcus realized with growing dread. Derek's operation isn't just about terrorism. He's recruited former military and intelligence personnel. People with the same training we have. The implications hit him like a physical blow. If Derek's network included ex-military operators, then the planned attacks on Seattle, Portland, and San Francisco would be executed with precision that could overwhelm traditional law enforcement responses. The casualty projections of 15,000 might actually be conservative estimates. Agent Chen activated her communication system and began transmitting urgent updates to federal command centers. This is Eagle 7. Asset confirms hostile organization includes former military personnel. Recommend immediate escalation to DEFCON 3 protocols. As she spoke, Marcus's mind automatically began processing tactical scenarios. Derek's team would establish a perimeter around the building, then systematically search adjacent structures until they located their target. Standard urban warfare doctrine adapted for civilian environments. But Marcus had one advantage his brother didn't expect: 4 years of combat experience against enemies who used similar tactics. In Afghanistan and Iraq, he'd learned to think like insurgents, to anticipate their movements and exploit their assumptions. There's another way out, he said suddenly. The storm drainage system. These buildings were constructed in the 1960s with underground tunnels connecting to the city's flood control network. Agent Rodriguez pulled up building schematics on his tablet. The drainage access point is in the sub-basement, approximately 50 meters from our current position, but the tunnels haven't been maintained in decades. We could get trapped underground. Better than getting trapped up here, Marcus replied, checking his weapon's ammunition load. Derek's people will systematically clear every floor until they find us. Underground, we control the variables. They abandoned the SUV and descended deeper into the building's infrastructure. The sub-basement smelled of stagnant water and decades of accumulated grime, but Marcus felt more comfortable in this environment than he had since returning from deployment. Underground spaces reminded him of the tunnel networks he'd navigated during counterinsurgency operations. The drainage access required removing a heavy steel grate, secured with rusted bolts. Agent Rodriguez produced tools that made quick work of the obstacles, while Agent Chen monitored radio communications for signs of approaching hostiles. Movement on floors 3 through 7, she reported. They're conducting room-to-room searches. Estimate 12 minutes before they reach basement levels. Marcus lowered himself into the drainage tunnel, surprised by how spacious the underground passage was. The tunnel stretched in both directions, disappearing into darkness that could lead either to safety or to a dead end that would become their tomb. City engineering records show the system connects to the main storm drainage network, Agent Rodriguez said, consulting his tablet by flashlight. We can reach extraction points, approximately 8 blocks from here. They began moving through the tunnel system, but after 10 minutes of careful navigation, Agent Chen's radio crackled with a transmission that stopped them cold. Underground pursuit initiated. Thermal imaging confirms 3 targets in the drainage system. Deploying containment teams to exit points. Derek's people had anticipated their escape route. Somehow they'd gained access to thermal imaging equipment and had positioned teams to intercept them at potential exit points. The hunters had become the hunted, and Marcus realized that his brother's operation was far more sophisticated than anyone at the Pentagon had suspected. "We're not just dealing with terrorists," he said grimly. "We're dealing with a parallel military organization operating on American soil." Agent Chen checked her weapon and adjusted her communication equipment. "Then we'd better start thinking like soldiers instead of law enforcement officers." As they prepared to navigate through hostile territory toward an uncertain extraction, Marcus felt a familiar sensation from his combat deployments, the crystalline focus that came when survival depended entirely on tactical thinking and precise execution. His brother had made one critical mistake. Derek still thought of Marcus as the failure who'd collected rejection letters and lived in a studio apartment. But the man moving through those drainage tunnels was a combat veteran who'd survived 4 years against enemies far more dangerous than corporate terrorists. The real Marcus Sullivan was about to remind Derek why the Pentagon had called him back to service. The thermal imaging signatures disappeared when Marcus led Agent Chen and Agent Rodriguez into the deepest section of Denver's drainage network, where decades of mineral deposits and industrial runoff had created natural heat shielding. But their temporary invisibility came at a cost. The tunnel system here was older, more unstable, with sections that hadn't seen maintenance since the 1940s. "Radio contact lost with command," Agent Chen reported, her voice echoing strangely in the confined space. "These tunnels are blocking our communications." Marcus studied the branching passages ahead, using skills learned during urban combat operations in Fallujah. Military doctrine says they'll position teams at obvious exit points: manholes, drainage outlets, maintenance access points. But cities this old have forgotten infrastructure, service tunnels that don't appear on modern maps. Agent Rodriguez consulted his tablet, though the GPS signal had become unreliable underground. Building records show this network connects to the old pneumatic postal system from the 1920s. Those tunnels were sealed during World War II but never filled. Which means they're still there, Marcus realized. And Derek's people won't know about them unless they've done historical research on Denver's infrastructure. They moved deeper into the maze of interconnected passages, following Marcus's instinctive navigation through urban underground systems. The air grew staler, carrying scents of rust and decay that reminded him of abandoned buildings in Baghdad's industrial districts. But after 30 minutes of careful movement, they encountered evidence that Derek's network was more thorough than they'd hoped. Fresh footprints in the tunnel, sediment, barely visible but unmistakably recent, radio frequency detectors placed at junction points, designed to locate their communication equipment. "They're already down here," Agent Chen whispered, drawing her sidearm. "Professional counter-surveillance sweep." Marcus felt his combat training engage fully for the first time since his discharge. The tunnel system became a battlefield where every shadow could hide an enemy, where every sound might signal approaching danger. But unlike his deployments overseas, this enemy knew him personally, understood his psychology, and could anticipate his tactical preferences. The first contact came at a T-junction where 3 tunnel systems converge. Muzzle flash from suppressed weapons, the distinctive whisper of subsonic ammunition designed for close-quarters combat. Marcus pulled both agents behind a concrete support pillar as bullets sparked against metal pipes. "Federal agents! Identify yourselves!" Agent Rodriguez shouted, following standard law enforcement protocol. The response came in the form of additional gunfire and a voice that made Marcus's blood run cold. "Hello, little brother. I know you're listening." Derek's voice carried perfect acoustics through the tunnel system, broadcast from concealed speakers that suggested sophisticated preparation. His tone remained calm, almost conversational, as if discussing weekend plans rather than coordinating a manhunt. "You always were too clever for your own good, Marcus. Even as kids, you'd find hiding places I never thought to look. Remember playing war games in the old storm drains behind our house?" Marcus did remember. Summer afternoons when Derek would organize elaborate games of pursuit and capture, always positioning himself as the commanding officer, while Marcus played the role of scout or messenger. Games where Derek invariably won through superior planning and tactical thinking. "The difference is," Derek continued, "now the games have real consequences. You've caused significant operational complications. Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, those cities were counting on you to help them die efficiently. Your Pentagon friends won't be able to stop what's coming, even with your intelligence reports. Agent Chen activated her backup communication system, trying to establish contact with federal response teams, but the tunnels seemed designed to absorb radio signals, creating dead zones where normal tactical coordination became impossible. "He's playing psychological warfare," Marcus whispered, "trying to force us into making emotional decisions instead of tactical ones." But Derek's next words hit with surgical precision. "Did you really think I didn't know about your Pentagon consultation from the beginning? Colonel Reeves, Commander Washington, Major Chen, we've been monitoring their communications for months. Every piece of intelligence you provided them went directly to our operational planning committee." The revelation staggered Marcus. If Derek's network had penetrated Pentagon communications, then everything he'd reported, every tactical assessment he'd provided, every strategic recommendation had been compromised from the start. The enemy hadn't just been using him as an unwitting double agent, they'd been using the entire Pentagon consultation as a source of military intelligence. "Movement. 2 o'clock, Agent Rodriguez whispered, pointing toward shadows shifting in an adjacent passage. "Multiple contacts, professional spacing." Marcus counted muzzle flashes as the firefight erupted. At least 6 shooters, positioned to create overlapping fields of fire that would trap them in the junction. Military tactics adapted for urban underground warfare. But Marcus had learned to fight in environments like this. During his final deployment, his unit had spent weeks clearing tunnel complexes where insurgents had established command centers beneath Iraqi cities. The principles remained the same: control the angles, manage ammunition conservation, use the environment to create tactical advantages. "Suppressing fire. 30 seconds, he called to both agents. "On my mark, we moved to the service ladder at 10 o'clock. The coordinated movement worked perfectly, but it also revealed something that changed everything. As they repositioned, Marcus caught a glimpse of their pursuers' equipment: night vision goggles, tactical communication gear, body armor that belonged to special operations forces rather than corporate security teams. These aren't Derek's people, he realized with growing horror. These are active-duty military personnel. Agent Chen processed the implications immediately. If your brother's network has compromised active military units, then the attacks aren't just terrorist operations, they're potential military coups. The tunnel system suddenly felt less like an escape route and more like a trap designed by someone who understood both Marcus's tactical preferences and federal law enforcement response protocols. Derek hadn't just been monitoring Pentagon communications, he'd been studying every aspect of American counterterrorism capabilities, preparing for an operation that would neutralize government response before attacks could be prevented. Marcus's encrypted phone buzzed with an incoming message, somehow reaching him despite the communication dead zone. The sender was listed as Colonel Reeves, but the content made his blood freeze. "Marcus, this is Derek using Janet's compromised communication system. You have exactly 1 hour to surrender yourself at Blackstone Financial, or the Seattle attack launches immediately instead of waiting until Monday. Every minute you delay means additional American casualties. Your choice, little brother. Come home and die quietly, or watch thousands die loudly on national television." Agent Rodriguez read the message over Marcus's shoulder. "It's a trap. Obviously." "Of course it's a trap," Marcus replied, checking his ammunition supply. "But it's also our only chance to prevent mass casualties." Agent Chen studied tactical maps on her tablet, trying to calculate approach routes to Blackstone Financial that might avoid Derek's surveillance networks. "Even if we could reach the building, it would be suicide. They'll have every access point covered." Marcus looked at both agents, professionals who'd risked their lives to extract him from immediate danger, who were now trapped underground with him while thousands of innocent lives hung in the balance. For the first time since his Pentagon consultation began, he felt complete clarity about what needed to be done. "You're right," he said, calmly. "It would be suicide for you." but I'm not asking you to come with me." "What are you saying?" Marcus began moving toward the service ladder that would take them back to street level. "I'm saying that sometimes the only way to win is to give the enemy exactly what they think they want." Marcus emerged from the storm drainage system 6 blocks from Blackstone Financial as dawn broke over Denver's skyline. The city looked deceptively peaceful. Early morning joggers, delivery trucks making their rounds, coffee shops opening for another ordinary Sunday. None of them knew that their country stood on the precipice of coordinated attacks that would reshape American history. Agent Chen and Agent Rodriguez had reluctantly agreed to his plan, but only after Marcus convinced them that a direct assault on Blackstone would accomplish nothing except alerting Derek's network to federal awareness of their operations. If the attacks were going to be stopped, it would require someone on the inside, someone Derek trusted completely, someone Derek thought he controlled. The walk to Blackstone took 12 minutes, during which Marcus transformed himself one final time. Not into the desperate failure seeking his brother's approval, and not into the Pentagon consultant gathering intelligence. This time, he became something Derek had never seen. A combat veteran who'd accepted that survival mattered less than mission completion. Blackstone's lobby was eerily quiet for a building supposedly conducting urgent financial operations. Security guards who should have been protecting corporate assets now moved with military precision, their eyes scanning for threats with professional wariness. Marcus recognized the subtle signs of soldiers masquerading as civilians. Victoria Kozlov waited by the elevators, her ice-blue eyes studying Marcus with predatory satisfaction. Right on time, Derek was certain you'd choose heroics over pragmatism. "I'm choosing to end this," Marcus replied, allowing exhaustion to color his voice while keeping his hands visible and non-threatening. The elevator ride to Derek's floor felt like ascending toward inevitable confrontation. Victoria maintained casual conversation while 2 armed escorts flanked Marcus, their weapons concealed but readily accessible. Professional behavior from professionals who understood that even captured enemies remained dangerous until completely neutralized. Derek's office had been transformed into a tactical command center. Multiple monitors displayed real-time feeds from Seattle, Portland, and San Francisco, where Marcus could see ordinary Sunday morning activities in locations that would soon become ground zero for mass casualties. Market data streams showed financial positions that would generate massive profits from economic chaos. Communication arrays connected Derek to operatives across multiple continents. "Welcome to the real Blackstone Financial," Derek said without looking up from his monitors. "Not the public company that manages pension funds and municipal bonds, but the private organization that's about to demonstrate American vulnerability to the entire world." Marcus studied the command center while maintaining his exhausted captive persona. Tactical displays showed operational timelines, casualty projections, and emergency response scenarios. But more importantly, they revealed something Derek probably hadn't intended to share: the locations of fail-safe systems designed to prevent operational compromise. "You've been planning this for years," Marcus said, genuine admiration creeping into his voice. "The financial company, the Pentagon infiltration, even bringing me in as an unwitting asset. How long have you been building this network?" Derek finally turned to face him, and Marcus saw something in his brother's eyes that he'd never noticed before, not just cruelty or ambition, but genuine ideological conviction. This wasn't about money or power or revenge against a system that had favored one brother over another. Derek truly believed he was saving America by destroying it. "Since our father died," Derek said quietly. "Do you remember his last words?" He said, "America had lost its way, that only catastrophic shock would force the country to rebuild itself properly. He made me promise to find a way to provide that shock." The revelation hit Marcus like a physical impact. Their father, a decorated Vietnam veteran who'd struggled with PTSD and died by suicide when Derek was 22, had apparently planted ideological seeds that grew into this elaborate conspiracy. Dad was sick, Derek. Traumatic brain injury, survivor's guilt, depression from losing his unit in combat. You can't base mass murder on the delusions of a damaged man. Delusions. Derek's voice carried dangerous intensity. "Look around you, Marcus. America is weak, divided, corrupted by comfort and complacency. Our military fights endless wars without clear objectives. Our government serves corporate interests while ignoring citizen welfare. Our people worship celebrities while ignoring suffering in their own communities. Victoria activated additional monitors showing news feeds from around the world. Conflicts in Eastern Europe, economic instability in South America, environmental disasters affecting island nations. Derek's organization has spent a decade identifying America's systemic vulnerabilities. Today's attacks will expose those vulnerabilities and force necessary changes. Marcus nodded thoughtfully while calculating distances to the tactical displays. The communication equipment, the fail-safe controls that could abort the planned attacks. You're probably right about American weaknesses, but you're wrong about solutions. EMI. Yes. Because you forgot the most important lesson Dad actually taught us. Marcus shifted his weight almost imperceptibly, positioning himself for movement toward the command systems. He said the difference between soldiers and terrorists is that soldiers protect innocent people, while terrorists sacrifice them for political goals. Derek's expression hardened. Innocent people die in every war. The question is whether their deaths serve a purpose. The question, Marcus said, and launched himself toward the communication array with explosive speed that caught everyone in the room by surprise, is whether you're willing to die to prevent those deaths. The next 30 seconds unfolded with brutal efficiency. Marcus's combat training overcame Derek's security team through precise application of violence. Disarming the first guard, using his weapon to neutralize the second, diving behind the command console as Victoria drew her sidearm. But Marcus wasn't trying to escape or even survive. He was buying time to access the abort codes he'd glimpsed on Derek's tactical displays, sequences that would shut down operational communications before the attacks could launch. Seattle, abort code, Tango 77 Delta, he shouted into the communication system while bullets shattered monitors around him. Portland abort code, Charlie 9 Alpha 6. San Francisco abort code, Whiskey 35 Echo. Derek's voice carried agonized fury. Those codes require biometric confirmation. You can't stop anything. Marcus looked up from behind the console, meeting his brother's eyes with calm certainty. I don't need to stop everything. I just need to delay it long enough for federal response teams to locate your operational centers. Because Agent Chen and Agent Rodriguez hadn't retreated to safety as ordered, they'd used Marcus's infiltration as cover to position FBI tactical teams around every building in Denver's financial district, ready to move the moment Marcus provided target confirmation. The sound of helicopters approaching from multiple directions confirmed that his sacrifice had achieved its intended purpose. Derek's network would be dismantled, the attacks prevented, thousands of lives saved. But as Derek raised his sidearm toward Marcus, their eyes met one final time. Despite everything, the betrayal, the manipulation, the attempted mass murder, Marcus felt unexpected sadness for the brother who'd allowed their father's trauma to poison his entire life. You could have been extraordinary, Derek. You are extraordinary. You just chose the wrong cause. Derek's expression softened for just a moment, revealing traces of the older brother who'd once taught Marcus to throw a baseball and helped him with algebra homework. I chose the only cause that mattered. The tactical breach came exactly as Marcus had predicted. Federal agents rappelling through windows, entering through stairwells, overwhelming Derek's security team with coordinated precision. Victoria Kozlov surrendered immediately. Recognizing inevitable defeat, the other operatives followed standard protocols for capture, preserving their lives for interrogation and intelligence gathering. But Derek made a different choice. Rather than face trial for treason and mass conspiracy, he activated a dead man switch that would destroy all evidence of his network's international connections. Marcus saw the motion and reacted instinctively, throwing himself across the room to prevent Derek from completing the sequence. They collided with violent impact. Two brothers who'd spent a lifetime competing finally engaged in combat that would determine which version of their father's legacy would survive. The struggle lasted only seconds, but it felt like everything. Their childhood rivalry, their divergent paths, Their father's unresolved trauma, their conflicting visions of service and sacrifice, concentrated into those final moments of physical conflict. When federal agents pulled them apart, Derek was unconscious but alive. The dead man's switch remained inactive. The evidence that would unravel his international network remained intact. Marcus sat against the shattered windows of his brother's office, watching FBI agents secure the command center that would have orchestrated America's worst terrorist attack. Through the broken glass, he could see Denver's skyline unchanged, its people unaware of how close they'd come to witnessing history's redefinition. His encrypted phone buzzed with a message from Colonel Reeves. All 3 target cities report normal operations. Attack networks neutralized. Mission accomplished, General Sullivan. General Sullivan. Marcus read the words twice before understanding. His tactical success had earned him immediate promotion to the rank his Pentagon consultation had been designed to evaluate. He'd become the thing Derek had always mocked, a genuine American hero. But as he watched his brother being loaded into an ambulance under federal guard, Marcus felt no triumph. Only the quiet satisfaction of duty completed and innocent lives preserved. 6 months later, Marcus would accept his commission as Brigadier General in charge of the Pentagon's new Domestic Counterterrorism Intelligence Division. Derek would plead guilty to conspiracy charges in exchange for cooperation with international investigations that would prevent similar networks from forming. And somewhere in a military cemetery in Colorado, their father's headstone would continue to bear the inscription Derek had chosen years earlier. In service to his country's future. Both brothers had honored that inscription, just in fundamentally different ways. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now, and hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.